No alarms rang when humanity disappeared. No fleets burned in orbit. No final broadcasts filled with static and fear. No desperate pleas echoed across the stars. They simply stopped. At first, no one noticed. Humanity had always been noisy. Too many signals, too many arguments, too many voices speaking over one another. When those voices faded, the galaxy assumed it was just another fluctuation, a temporary silence. But it didn't end. Days turned into cycles, trade routes went dark, outposts stopped responding. Entire human colonies vanished from communication networks without so much as a goodbye. And still no distress calls. That was what made it unsettling. Even collapsing civilizations screamed. Humanity did not. Inside the vast crystalline chambers of the Tarsoon Collective, High Arbiter Vethril studied the incoming data streams with quiet detachment. "Confirm status," he commanded. A subordinate flickered its bioluminescent form in acknowledgement. Sector Sol and all associated colonies have ceased outbound transmissions for 19 standard cycles. No military engagements detected. No debris fields observed. "No conflict?" Vethril asked. "None." A pause stretched across the chamber. Then came the conclusion that would echo across the conquered. Human civilization is presumed extinct. The statement was accepted without resistance. No mourning, no ceremony, just a silent agreement. One less unpredictable species in an already unstable galaxy. But not everyone accepted it so easily. Commander Lyris Kale stood alone in the observation deck of the reconnaissance vessel Inevitable Horizon, staring at the frozen data feed. "Extinct," she repeated quietly. The word felt wrong. Behind her, Lieutenant Saren shifted uneasily. "All indicators support it, Commander. Their expansion halted abruptly. Infrastructure inactive. Population signals gone." Lyris didn't turn. "They didn't fight," she said. Saren hesitated. Maybe they didn't have time. Lyris shook her head. "No, humans always fight." Her gaze drifted to an archived transmission playing silently on the display. Crowded streets, overlapping voices, chaotic debates. Humans arguing, laughing, shouting over each other about things both trivial and profound. They were loud, alive, messy. "They don't vanish like this," she murmured. Her first request to investigate Sol was denied within minutes. Low strategic value. The second lasted longer. Confirmed extinction, no resources allocated. The third came with a warning. "Commander Kale, redirect your focus to active sectors." She almost gave up. Almost. But then she found it. Buried deep in Presilence data logs, something small, easy to overlook. Energy spikes. Not random, not natural. Coordinated. System-wide. Her pulse quickened. "What were you building?" she whispered. Her fourth request was different. Potential pre-collapse weapons development risk in Sector Sol. This time, the response came quickly. Clearance granted. The journey took 11 cycles. Too long to stay certain. Too long to ignore doubt. By the 10th cycle, even her own crew had begun to question her. "If there's nothing there," Saren said carefully, "we'll have wasted valuable time." Lyris leaned against the command rail, eyes fixed on the distant stars. "If there's nothing there," she replied, "then I'll accept I was wrong." Saren nodded slowly. "And if you're not?" Lyris didn't answer, because she didn't know which possibility unsettled her more. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. Silence greeted them. Not the quiet of empty space. Something deeper. Heavier. "Initial scans," Lyris ordered. "Running," the sensor officer replied. The display flickered to life. Earth rotated slowly into view, blue, vibrant, untouched. Too untouched. "No orbital traffic," the officer reported. "No satellites transmitting, no defense grids active." "Population?" Lyris asked. A pause. Then, "Minimals." The word hit harder than expected. "Clarify." Scattered biosignatures, extremely low density, no concentrated urban activity. Lyris felt a chill crawl up her spine. Zoom in. Cities filled the screen. Massive, intact, silent. Towering structures stood like monuments to a vanished species. Roads lay empty, lights dark, no movement. It looked less like destruction, and more like abandonment. They left, Saren whispered. But Lyris wasn't looking at the cities anymore. Her focus had shifted outward. Beyond Earth. Beyond Mars. Into the vast emptiness between worlds. Commander, the sensor officer said slowly, voice tightening. I'm detecting anomalies. Define anomalies. Large-scale structures, multiple, no correction. His voice trembled. Countless. The main display expanded. And suddenly, the darkness of space wasn't empty anymore. Shapes emerged. Colossal. Still. Hidden in the shadows between planets, drifting along asteroid belts, stationed at the far edges of the system. At first glance, they seemed like fragments of something broken. Until one of them moved. The entire bridge went still. Those aren't stations, Saren breathed. Lyris stepped forward, her pulse hammering. No, she said quietly. Her eyes widened as the scale became clear. Each structure dwarfed capital ships. Dwarfed fleets. Dwarfed imagination. Power readings, she demanded. None, came the reply. They're completely dormant. Dormant. Not destroyed. Not abandoned. Waiting. Then, a new signal flashed across the console. Sharp, precise. Impossible. Commander, the sensor officer whispered. They just noticed us. Lyris's voice dropped to a breath. All of them. The officer swallowed. Yes. Across the entire Sol system. Thousands of colossal constructs shifted in perfect, silent synchronization. Turning. Aligning. Focusing. On one small reconnaissance ship. Lyris felt her chest tighten as a single realization hit her like a shockwave. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had been preparing. And whatever they built had just woken up. For a moment, no one spoke. On the bridge of the inevitable horizon, even breathing felt too loud, like any sudden noise might provoke the silent giants now turning in the dark. Confirm movement, Commander Lyris Kale said, her voice steady but low. The sensor officer didn't look away from the console. Confirmed, all detected structures are adjusting orientation. All, Saren asked, disbelief creeping in. Yes, Lieutenant, all of them. The display filled with motion vectors, thousands of faint lines, each representing something massive shifting with impossible precision. Not erratic, not defensive. Coordinated. Lyris's mind raced. This isn't automated drift, she murmured. This is control. But there are no power signatures, another officer added quickly. No active reactors, no emissions, nothing that explains. A sharp tone cut him off. New data flooded in. Correction, the sensor officer said, voice rising. I'm picking up micro-fluctuations across all structures. Minimal energy pulses, too small for propulsion, too precise for decay. Lyris leaned forward. Define. The officer hesitated. They're thinking. A ripple of unease passed through the crew. Artificial intelligence? Saren asked. No, Lyris said immediately. Not like anything we've seen. Her eyes scanned the data. They're not independent systems. Look, every fluctuation is synchronized. It's not multiple minds. Her voice dropped. It's one. The realization hung in the air. One intelligence, spread across thousands of planet-sized constructs. Watching them. Open a channel, Lyris ordered. Saren blinked, Commander. If something is controlling this, I want it to know we're not a threat. The comm officer nodded, hands moving quickly. Channel open, broadcasting standard Concord identification. The signal pulsed outward, clean, formal, non-aggressive. They waited. Nothing. The fleet remained silent, still turning, still aligning, still watching. "Try human frequencies," Lyra said. Saren frowned. "Those systems have been inactive for." "Try them." A moment later, a new signal broadcast into the void old Earth protocols, long considered obsolete. Seconds passed. Then, a response. It didn't come as sound or light, but as a sudden, overwhelming surge of data. Raw, structured, intentional. The ship's systems struggled to process it. "Filtering, the comm officer shouted. "It's not an attack, just too much." Lyris gripped the command rail. "Extract anything readable." The chaos condensed, compressed, translated. A single line appeared on the main display. "Observer detected." The words sent a chill through the bridge. "That's not a greeting," Saren said quietly. "No," Lyris agreed. "It's a classification." Before anyone could respond, the message expanded. Streams of human code unfolded, ancient encryption layered over something far more advanced. The ship's AI struggled, then adapted, then finally began to decode. Fragments emerged. Coordinates, timelines, construction logs, and something else. "Commander," the sensor officer whispered, "these aren't just ships." Lyris didn't look away. "I know." The display zoomed in on one of the massive constructs. Details sharpened. Its surface wasn't smooth. It was segmented, layered with interlocking plates kilometers thick. Beneath them, faint geometric patterns hinted at something far more complex. Weapon arrays, energy conduits, gravitational anchors. "These are platforms," Saren said slowly. "For what?" someone asked. No one answered. Because the scale was already terrifying. And the purpose? Worse. Another data spike hit the system. Cleaner this time. More deliberate. The message shifted. Reorganized. Focused. A voice emerged. Human. Calm. Controlled. "We learned something," it said. The entire crew froze. Lyris felt her heartbeat in her throat. "This is a recording," she whispered, "pre-programmed." The voice continued, unwavering. "The galaxy does not fear potential." Images flashed across the screen. Human ships, colonies, expansion routes. Growth. Ambition. Possibility. It fears certainty. The images changed. Simulations. Planets cracking apart. Stars destabilizing. Entire systems erased in controlled, calculated strikes. A silence followed. Heavy. Deliberate. Saren took a step back. "They built this." Lyris shook her head slowly, her eyes locked on the display. "No." Her voice barely held. "They didn't just build it." The data kept unfolding, centuries of preparation hidden in decades of silence. Logistics chains rerouted. Industries repurposed. Entire populations relocated. They committed to it. The voice returned. "So we removed uncertainty." The fleet outside shifted again. Not toward the inevitable horizon. Past it, aligning with vectors that stretched far beyond the Sol system. Into deep, uncharted space. "Commander," the sensor officer said, panic creeping in, "I'm detecting long-range targeting solutions." "Targets where?" The officer swallowed hard. "Everywhere outside the mapped galaxy." The bridge fell into stunned silence. Because in that moment, the truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't a defense system. It wasn't a deterrent. It wasn't even a fleet. It was a trigger. And as the final line of the message appeared, "If you are seeing this, you are already too late." The moment the fleet powered up, space itself seemed to tense. Not visibly, not violently. But something changed. On the inevitable horizon, every system flickered as if reacting to a pressure no instrument could measure. "Stabilize the core," Saren snapped. We're stable, the engineer replied, confused. Nothing's hitting us. No radiation spikes, no gravity distortion. Then why does it feel like we're about to be crushed? Someone muttered. No one answered. Because they all felt it. Outside, the Armada burned to life. Not with explosive energy or chaotic ignition, but with cold, controlled precision. Lines of dim light traced across each colossal structure, like veins awakening beneath metal skin. Thousands of them, all synchronized, all silent. Energy readings climbing across all constructs, the sensor officer reported, but still below combat thresholds. Lyris narrowed her eyes. Below. Yes, Commander, it's like they're restraining output. Why? No one had an answer. The human voice returned. Calm, measured, unshaken by the scale of what it had created. We were not the first to reach the stars. The display shifted again. A map appeared, not of known space, but of something far larger. The galaxy and beyond it. Faint regions marked in red. Expanding. At first we thought we were alone, the voice continued. Then we thought we were early. The red regions pulsed. Growing. Consuming. Both assumptions were wrong. Lyris felt her stomach tighten. Zoom those sectors, she ordered. The system complied. What appeared made several crew members step back instinctively. There were no stars. Or rather, there had been. Now there was only absence. Perfect, unnatural voids carved into the structure of space. What did that? Saren whispered. The answer came immediately. They did, the human voice said. A new layer of data unfolded, intercepted signals. Aliens. Harsh. Incomprehensible at first. Then translated. Expansion species detected. Growth exceeding acceptable thresholds. Containment probability, low. The bridge fell silent. Extermination protocols initiated. The words hit like a physical blow. Lyris's hands clenched. This was sent to humanity, she asked. Yes, the sensor officer replied quietly, timestamped decades before their silence. Why didn't they warn anyone? Someone demanded. But Lyris already knew. Her gaze remained fixed on the expanding red voids. They tried, she said softly. We just didn't listen. The voice continued. They do not negotiate, they do not communicate, they measure. Images flashed, human vessels observing distant anomalies, long-range probes vanishing, entire systems going dark without explanation. And when a species reaches a certain threshold, the red zones expanded again. Faster, closer, they erase it. A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Because suddenly everything made sense. The quiet, the disappearance, the lack of distress. Humanity hadn't been destroyed. They had been targeted. We calculated our probability of survival, the voice said. Numbers filled the screen. Simulations. Outcomes. Failure after failure after failure. Zero, Saren whispered. The voice confirmed it. Without intervention, extinction. Lyris exhaled slowly, her chest tight. So they built this, she said. Yes, the voice replied. The display shifted one final time. Now it showed the Armada. Every construct, every weapon, every impossible machine orbiting in perfect silence. We chose a different variable. The energy levels spiked again. Higher now. More focused. Preemption. The word echoed through the ship. Not defense. Not survival. Attack. They found them, Lyris realized, her voice barely audible. The sensor officer nodded pale. Long-range targeting confirms it, these trajectories. He swallowed. They lead beyond the galaxy, directly into those red zones. They're going after them, Saren said. Lyris didn't respond immediately, because she was staring at something new. A countdown, hidden in the data stream. Almost complete. Commander, the officer said, voice shaking. All constructs are reaching synchronization. How long, she asked. A pause. Then, less than 1 minute. The human voice spoke one last time. Steady, certain, unafraid. If we wait, we die. The Armada brightened. Space warped slightly around each construct, like reality itself was bracing. If we fight together, we might survive. Lyris felt her pulse hammer. They didn't call for help, she whispered. No, Saren said. They didn't. The final words came like a verdict. So we chose to fight alone. The countdown hit 0. And in that exact instant, every single weapon in the Sol system fired. There was no explosion. No blinding flash. No thunder of destruction. When the Armada fired, it happened in silence. From every colossal construct, thin beams of light lanced into the void, so precise, so focused, they barely seemed real. Thousands of them stretching outward in perfect alignment, piercing the darkness beyond the Sol system. For a heartbeat, it looked almost delicate. Then space bent. Gravitational distortion spike, the sensor officer shouted. Those beams, they're not just energy. Then what are they? Saren demanded. The readings poured in faster than the systems could process. They're folding space, no tearing it, creating corridors, no tunnels. Lyris's eyes widened. They're not firing through space, she whispered. They're bypassing it. The beams didn't travel. They connected. From Sol to something impossibly far away. Instantly. Tracking endpoints, the officer yelled. The display struggled, then locked onto multiple distant coordinates, far beyond the galaxy's edge. Red-marked regions. The voids. And then, the beams intensified. On the main screen, something impossible appeared. Not a live image, not exactly. A reconstruction. Data translated into something the crew could understand. At the far end of one beam, a star system flickered into view. Except it wasn't a system anymore. It was occupied. Shapes filled the darkness. Vast organic metallic. Neither. All wronged. They moved like living storms, tendrils of impossible geometry stretching across entire planetary orbits. What is that? Someone breathed. No one answered. Because the answer was already forming. They found them, Lyris said quietly. The first beam struck. There was no impact. No collision. Just a moment. Where everything stopped. Then the system collapsed. Not exploded. Not shattered. Collapsed. As if reality itself had been pulled inward, crushed under a force too vast to comprehend. The star dimmed. Planets folded. And the entities, those massive, incomprehensible shapes, twisted violently. For the first time, they reacted. A signal burst across the void. Violent, chaotic, alien. The ship systems screamed as they tried to translate it. Hostile anomaly detected. Unexpected resistance. Deviation from projection. They didn't expect this, Saren said, stunned. Lyris shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. They didn't expect humans. More beams connected. More systems appeared. More targets. Each one different. Each one wrong. Some looked like vast mechanical webs surrounding dead stars. Others like fluid, shifting masses consuming entire systems. One wasn't even visible, only detectable through distortions in space, like something too large to fully exist in reality. And the Armada struck them all. Simultaneously. Energy output increasing, the sensor officer shouted. They're scaling up. The beams thickened. Brightened. Deepened. Across every targeted system. Destruction unfolded. Entities lashed out, releasing waves of energy that tore through their own systems. Space fractured. Stars flared violently before being extinguished. Some of the alien forms tried to escape. But the beams followed. Relentless. Unavoidable. They're not just attacking, Lyra said, her voice tight with awe. They're erasing. Another signal broke through. Stronger this time. Focused. Directed. Threat level reassessment. Human civilization categorized as. The translation faltered. Struggled. Then completed. Existential. The word echoed like a verdict. Saren exhaled sharply. They're afraid. Lyris didn't respond, because she was staring at something else. One of the distant systems wasn't collapsing. Commander, the sensor officer said, voice unsteady, target designation 47 is resisting. The display zoomed in. The entity there was different. Larger, more stable. Its form didn't distort under the beam's pressure. Instead, it adapted. Energy from the beam bent around it. Absorbed. Redirected. That's not possible, Saren said. They're countering it, the officer whispered. Then, for the first time, the alien force struck back. A wave surged outward from the distant system. Not energy. Not matter. Something else. It traveled along the beam. Disconnect, Lyris shouted. Too late, came the reply. The wave reached the edge of the Sol system and slammed into the nearest construct. The result was immediate. One of the colossal human structures simply vanished. No explosion. No debris. No trace. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Commander, Saren said slowly. They can hit back. Lyra stared at the empty space where the construct had been. Her voice was quiet. Tight. Yes. Another human structure adjusted its position. Then another. Then dozens more. Recalculating. Adapting. The Armada didn't hesitate. It didn't retreat. It evolved. And as more beams shifted, focusing on the resisting target, Lyris felt a cold realization settle deep in her chest. This wasn't a battle. It was the beginning of a war. And humanity had just fired the first shot. But somewhere in the darkness beyond the galaxy, something had just fired back, for the first time since the Armada awakened. Humanity lost something. The empty space where the construct had been felt wrong. Not damaged. Not broken. Gone. As if it had never existed. Confirm loss, Lyra said, her voice steady despite the tightening in her chest. The sensor officer swallowed. One construct completely erased. No debris, no residual energy. It's like it was removed from reality. Saren exhaled slowly. That thing didn't destroy it. His voice dropped. It deleted it. A ripple passed through the rest of the Armada. Not panic. Not confusion. Adjustment. Vectors shifted. Formations tightened. Dozens of constructs rotated, realigning their beams toward the resisting target. Their response was immediate. Precise. Cold. They're adapting, Lyra said quietly. The data confirmed it. Energy outputs recalibrated, frequencies altered, spatial distortions refined. The beams changed, subtly at first, then dramatically. Sharper. Denser. More focused. They've already learned from the first strike, Saren said, disbelief creeping into his tone. Lyris didn't look away from the display. They expected losses. Far beyond the galaxy, the resisting entity moved. Not like the others. Not chaotic. Intentional. Its form twisted, folding through dimensions the human sensors could barely interpret. It wasn't just occupying space. It was redefining it. Target 47 is shifting structure, the sensor officer reported. It's no longer absorbing energy the same way. Meaning, Lyris asked. It's evolving its defenses. A heavy silence settled over the bridge. Because that meant one thing. So are they, Lyris said, watching the human armada. The beams converged. Hundreds of them, then thousands, all focusing on the same target. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entity reacted. Its massive form pulsed, releasing another wave, stronger this time. The same impossible force surged outward, racing along the connected beams toward Saul. Incoming counterstrike, the sensor officer shouted. Sever connections, Saren barked. But the Armada didn't disconnect. They're holding the link, Lyris realized. Why would they? The answer came instantly. The beams shifted again. At the exact moment the wave reached them. They changed frequency. The incoming force hit. And split. Instead of traveling cleanly back to Saul, it fractured across multiple beams, dispersing into dozens of directions. Some constructs flickered. A few went dark. But none vanished. They redirected it, Saren said, stunned. Lyris nodded slowly. They turned its own attack against it. The energy reflected back toward the distant system. Amplified. Focused. Weaponized. For the first time, the entity faltered. Its structure destabilized, segments collapsing inward as the combined force of human weaponry and its own redirected attack crushed against it. The surrounding system warped violently. Planets twisted. The star flared. Then dimmed. It's breaking, the sensor officer shouted. But it didn't die. Instead, it changed. Its form compressed, condensing into something smaller, denser, more stable. More dangerous. Energy readings spiking, the officer warned. It's not weakening, it's concentrating. Lyris felt her pulse quicken. It's learning faster now, she said. Faster than before. The human armada reacted instantly. More constructs joined the assault. New weapon systems activated, ones the inevitable horizon hadn't even detected before. Gravitational lances, temporal distorters, localized reality anchors. Weapons that didn't just destroy. They overwrote. The beams intensified again. The distant system screamed in silent collapse. And then, the entity struck back one final time. Not with a wave, not with energy, but with a signal. It surged through the network, faster than the previous attacks, bypassing the physical connection of the beams. Straight into the Sol system, into every construct, into the inevitable horizon. The ship systems erupted in alarms. Foreign data intrusion, the comm officer yelled. It's inside our network. Cut all external links, Saren ordered. Too late, it's already in. The lights flickered. The displays glitched. And for a brief, horrifying moment, the entire bridge saw something that wasn't there. A shape. Massive. Watching. Then it was gone. Silence returned. The system stabilized. The intrusion vanished. Report, Lyris said, her voice tight. The crew scrambled, checking systems. No damage, the engineer said shakily. No corruption, it didn't take anything. Saren frowned, then what did it do? No one answered. Because at that exact moment, a new message appeared on the main display. Not human. Translated automatically. Location confirmed. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Lyris felt her blood run cold. It knows where we are, she whispered. Outside. The human armada didn't stop. Didn't hesitate. Didn't slow down. But for the first time, the war wasn't far away anymore. It was coming. And Saul had just been marked. For a long moment, no one moved. The words location confirmed, burned on the main display like a wound that wouldn't close. Tell me that's a misinterpretation, Saren said, his voice tight. The comm officer didn't even try to soften it. It's not. The translation is stable across multiple frameworks. Source, Lyris asked. A pause. Then, unknown, it didn't come through any identifiable channel. Lyris exhaled slowly. That means it didn't need one. Outside, the Armada continued its assault. Beams still stretched across impossible distances, tearing into the resisting entity beyond the galaxy. The war was still happening out there. But now, it wasn't just out there anymore. Commander, the sensor officer said, voice unsteady, I'm detecting new energy signatures. Lyris's gaze snapped to the display. From where? Everywhere. The system map lit up. Not with the human constructs, they were already active. This was something else. Faint distortions. Scattered. Unfocused. At first glance, they looked like sensor errors. Then one of them moved. Track that, Lyris ordered. The system zoomed in. Space rippled subtly, almost invisibly. Like heat distortion. But colder. Wronged. Is that a ship? Saren asked. No, Lyris said quietly. Her instincts screamed the truth before the data confirmed it. It's an entry point. Another distortion appeared. Then another. Then dozens. They're not coming through the edges of the system, the sensor officer whispered. They're forming inside it. Lyris's jaw tightened. They're skipping distance entirely. The implication hit the crew all at once. The enemy didn't need to travel. They could arrive. Time to full manifestation? Saren asked. The officer's hands trembled slightly over the console. Minutes. For the first time since the Armada awakened. The Sol system was no longer just a launch point. It was a battlefield. Commander, the engineer said carefully, should we retreat? Lyris didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were locked on the Armada. On the thousands of constructs still firing into the void. Still focused on a war far away. They haven't disengaged, she said. Saren frowned. They're prioritizing the external threat. Yes. Then we need to leave, if those things arrive here while the Armada is. No. The word cut through the bridge. Lyris turned, her expression hard. They knew this would happen. The realization settled in, heavy and undeniable. This wasn't a mistake, she continued. It's part of the plan. As if in response, the human voice returned. Calm. Unshaken. If you are witnessing this. The entire crew froze. Then they have already found you. Lyris felt a chill run down her spine. We calculated this outcome, the voice continued. Probability high. The distortions in space grew stronger. Closer. More defined. We also calculated your response. Saren glanced at Lyris. Our response. The voice didn't pause. You will consider retreat. Silence filled the bridge. Lyris clenched her fists. You will consider warning others. The distortions began to take shape now. Shadows forming where nothing should exist. You will consider survival. Saren's voice was barely audible. That's exactly what we're doing. Then the voice changed. Just slightly. Still calm. But heavier. We did too. The Armada shifted. Not away from the distant war, but around Sol itself. Hundreds of constructs broke formation. Then thousands. Commander, the sensor officer shouted, they're repositioning. Where? Lyris demanded. The answer came as the system map redrew itself. A sphere, centered on Sol. They're forming a perimeter, Saren said, disbelief creeping into his voice. No, Lyris corrected. Her eyes widened as the scale became clear. Not a perimeter. The constructs locked into place. Layer upon layer. A shell of impossible density. Weapons facing outward. A shield. The distortion surged. The first of the enemy forms began to emerge. Massive, incomprehensible shapes forcing their way into reality. And for the first time, the human Armada stopped firing outward. All weapons turned inward, toward the incoming threat. The voice spoke one final time. We will not run. The first entity fully manifested, a towering mass of shifting geometry that bent light around it. We will not hide. It moved. Fast. We will hold the line. Every construct in the Sol system powered to maximum output. Lyris felt the weight of it press against her chest. Humanity hadn't abandoned this system. They had fortified it. And as the first shots were fired inside Sol, Lyris realized the truth with terrifying clarity. This wasn't where humanity disappeared. This was where they chose to make their stand. The first impact didn't sound like anything. It felt like everything. When the outer layer of the human armada fired, space rippled inward, folding around the newly formed entity like a tightening fist. The construct closest to the breach released a focused gravitational lance, silent, invisible, yet its effect was immediate. The creature bent. Not physically. Reality bent around it. Direct hit, the sensor officer shouted. But the word hit felt inadequate. The entity twisted, its form fracturing into angles that shouldn't exist. Light warped, time jittered. The surrounding vacuum shimmered like it was trying to reject what it contained. It's destabilizing, Saren said. Lyris didn't respond, because she was watching something else. More distortions were opening. Not one, not 10, hundreds. They're flooding the system, she whispered. The second wave came through faster than the first. Smaller entities, if small could describe something the size of continents, slipped into existence, their forms less stable but far more aggressive. They moved instantly. No hesitation. No coordination needed. One surged toward the nearest human construct and passed straight through it. The structure flickered violently. Then, half of it vanished. Loss confirmed, the officer shouted. Partial deletion, structural integrity collapsing. The construct didn't explode. Didn't fall. It simply ceased to exist piece by piece. Lyris's grip tightened. They're not destroying matter, she said. They're erasing it. The Armada responded immediately. Not with panic. With precision. The outer shell shifted, constructs overlapping their fields of fire, creating a web of intersecting forces. Beams crossed, layered, reinforced, turning the space between them into something denser than solid. A containment grid. The advancing entities slammed into it. And stopped. For a moment, the system held. They're blocking them, Saren said, hope flickering in his voice. Then the grid started to crack. Not visibly, but in the data. Fluctuations. Instability. They're adapting again, the sensor officer said, his voice tight with strain. They're finding weak points. One entity shifted sideways. Not moving through space, but around it. It bypassed the grid entirely. Inside the perimeter, someone shouted. It appeared just beyond Mars. Closer than anything had been before. Lyris's breath caught. That's too fast. The construct nearest to it reacted instantly. A new weapon fired. Not a beam. A pulse. Time itself seemed to stutter. The entity froze mid-motion, its form locking in place as the pulse enveloped it. For a fraction of a second, it was perfectly still. Then it shattered. Not into pieces. Into nothing. The space it occupied snapped back into place, empty. Clean. Silence hit the bridge like a shockwave. They can kill them, Saren said, almost in disbelief. Yes, Lyris replied. But her voice was heavy. They can. More entities poured in. Dozens now inside the outer shell. Each one different. Each one learning. The Armada adapted again. Inner layers activated, constructs shifting inward, tightening the defensive sphere around the inner planets. Earth, Mars, the core of the system. They're collapsing their own perimeter, Saren said. To protect the center, Lyris replied. To protect what? Someone asked. No one answered. Because the answer felt too obvious. Humanity might be gone. But something they left behind was a massive entity forced its way through near Jupiter, larger than the others, slower, but far more stable. It didn't attack immediately. It observed. Then, it emitted a signal. The same one as before. Target confirmed. Lyris felt a chill run through her. It's focusing on something, she said. The system map shifted. A line appeared. From the entity to Earth. No, Saren whispered. The Armada reacted instantly. Every construct within range pivoted. Weapons charging. Energy spiking. But the entity moved first. It didn't travel. It collapsed distance. One moment it was near Jupiter. The next, it was in orbit of Earth. Intercept, Lyris shouted. Every weapon fired. The space around Earth lit up, not with light but with distortion. Forces collided, reality twisting under the strain. The entity flickered, held, resisted, and then it pushed through. For the first time, something got past the human defense. The bridge fell into stunned silence. Because now, the war wasn't at the edge of the system. It was at the heart of it. And whatever humanity had been protecting was about to be tested for one impossible moment. Everything stopped. The entity hovered above Earth. Not in orbit. Not bound by gravity. Just there. A presence so vast it warped the planet's reflection across its surface, bending oceans and continents into distorted echoes of themselves. On the inevitable horizon, no one breathed. No one spoke, because every instinct screamed the same truth. If it acted, there would be nothing left to save. Why isn't it attacking? Saren whispered. Lyris didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the data, on the readings pouring in from every sensor. It's scanning, she said finally. Scanning for what? The answer came from the entity itself. A signal burst outward. Stronger than before. Clearer. Focused. Primary target located. The words echoed across every system. The display shifted automatically. Zooming in. Not on cities. Not on continents. On a single point. Deep beneath Earth's surface. Lyris felt her pulse spike. What is that? She demanded. The sensors struggled, interference spiking, readings collapsing under the pressure of something hidden. Then, for a fraction of a second, the data cleared, and the truth appeared. A structure, massive, buried, ancient yet not. Commander, the sensor officer whispered. That's not a city. No, Lyris said. Her voice dropped. It's a core. The entity moved. Not toward the surface. Through it. The planet didn't crack. Didn't break. Reality simply parted. A wound opened in space itself, and the entity slipped through, descending directly toward the hidden structure beneath Earth. Stop it, Saren shouted. The Armada answered. Every construct in range fired. Not in waves. Not in sequence. All at once, the space around Earth collapsed into a storm of controlled destruction. Gravitational forces twisted into barriers, temporal pulses froze entire regions of space, and reality anchors locked the planet into a fixed point, preventing further distortion. For a moment, the entity stalled. Then it pushed forward. Slowly, relentlessly. It's breaking through, the sensor officer yelled. All systems are at maximum. Not all, Lyris said suddenly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Because she saw it. Deep in the data stream. Hidden beneath layers of encryption. One final system. Dormant. Waiting. Bring it up, she ordered. The crew hesitated. Commander, that's human command authority, Saren said carefully. I know. You don't have clearance. I don't need it. Her voice hardened. It's already active. The system unlocked. Not because she forced it, but because it was meant to be seen. A final message appeared. Not recorded. Live. A human voice. Tired. Steady. We knew one would get through. The bridge went silent. They always do, the voice continued. That's how they learn. Lyris felt her chest tighten. Then why stay, she whispered. As if answering her. The voice spoke again. Because we learned too. The buried structure beneath Earth came alive. Not with light. With presence. A pulse spread outward, deep, resonant, undeniable. The entity froze. For the first time. It hesitated. What is that? Saren asked, his voice barely audible. Lyra stared at the readings. At the impossible energy signature rising from beneath the planet. It's not a weapon, she said slowly. The voice confirmed it. It's not meant to destroy them. The pulse intensified. The entity began to distort, its form unraveling, not under force, but under something else. Something deeper. It's meant to stop them. The realization hit like a shockwave. Not by killing, Lyris whispered, but by ending what they are. The entity lashed out. One final desperate surge. But it was too late. The pulse consumed it. Not violently. Completely. Its form collapsed inward. Then vanished. Silence fell across the system. The distortions faded. The remaining entities froze. Then began to withdraw. Retreating. For the first time. They were leaving. The Armada held position. Didn't pursue. Didn't fire. Because the battle was over. For now. On the bridge, no one spoke. Until Saren finally asked. What did they build? Lyra stared at Earth. At the quiet blue world hiding something that changed everything. Her voice was soft. Not a weapon. A pause. Then, aligned. She looked at the fading stars beyond the system. At the war humanity had chosen to fight alone. And the truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. They hadn't disappeared. They hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had done something far more terrifying. They had become the reason it still existed. And somewhere beyond the darkness, the enemy was still out there. Learning, waiting. But now, so was humanity, for one impossible moment. Everything stopped. The entity hovered above Earth. Not in orbit. Not bound by gravity. Just there. A presence so vast it warped the planet's reflection across its surface, bending oceans and continents into distorted echoes of themselves. On the inevitable horizon, no one breathed. No one spoke. Because every instinct screamed the same truth. If it acted, there would be nothing left to save. Why isn't it attacking? Saren whispered. Lyris didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the data. On the readings pouring in from every sensor. It's scanning, she said finally. Scanning for what? The answer came from the entity itself. A signal burst outward. Stronger than before. Clearer. Focused. Primary target located. The words echoed across every system. The display shifted automatically. Zooming in. Not on cities. Not on continents. On a single point. Deep beneath Earth's surface. Lyris felt her pulse spike. What is that? She demanded. The sensors struggled, interference spiking, readings collapsing under the pressure of something hidden. Then, for a fraction of a second, the data cleared, and the truth appeared. A structure, massive, buried, ancient yet not. Commander, the sensor officer whispered. That's not a city. No, Lyra said. Her voice dropped. It's a core. The entity moved. Not toward the surface. Through it, the planet didn't crack, didn't break. Reality simply parted. A wound opened in space itself, and the entity slipped through, descending directly toward the hidden structure beneath Earth. "Stop it," Saren shouted. The Armada answered. Every construct in range fired. Not in waves. Not in sequence. All at once, the space around Earth collapsed into a storm of controlled destruction. Gravitational forces twisted into barriers, temporal pulses froze entire regions of space, and reality anchors locked the planet into a fixed point, preventing further distortion. For a moment, the entity stalled. Then it pushed forward. Slowly, relentlessly. "It's breaking through," the sensor officer yelled. "All systems are at maximum." "Not all," Lyris said suddenly. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Because she saw it. Deep in the data stream. Hidden beneath layers of encryption. One final system. Dormant. Waiting. "Bring it up," she ordered. The crew hesitated. "Commander, that's human command authority," Saren said carefully. "I know. You don't have clearance. I don't need it." Her voice hardened. "It's already active." The system unlocked. Not because she forced it, but because it was meant to be seen. A final message appeared. Not recorded. Live. A human voice. Tired. Steady. "We knew one would get through." The bridge went silent. "They always do," the voice continued. "That's how they learn." Lyris felt her chest tighten. "Then why stay?" she whispered. As if answering her. The voice spoke again. "Because we learned too." The buried structure beneath Earth came alive. Not with light. With presence. A pulse spread outward, deep, resonant, undeniable. The entity froze. For the first time. It hesitated. "What is that?" Saren asked, his voice barely audible. Lyra stared at the readings. At the impossible energy signature rising from beneath the planet. "It's not a weapon," she said slowly. The voice confirmed it. "It's not meant to destroy them." The pulse intensified. The entity began to distort, its form unraveling, not under force, but under something else. Something deeper. "It's meant to stop them." The realization hit like a shockwave. "Not by killing," Lyris whispered, "but by ending what they are." The entity lashed out. One final desperate surge. But it was too late. The pulse consumed it. Not violently. Completely. Its form collapsed inward. Then vanished. Silence fell across the system. The distortions faded. The remaining entities froze. Then began to withdraw. Retreating. For the first time. They were leaving. The Armada held position. Didn't pursue. Didn't fire. Because the battle was over. For now. On the bridge, no one spoke. Until Saren finally asked, "What did they build?" Lyra stared at Earth. At the quiet blue world hiding something that changed everything. Her voice was soft. "Not a weapon." A pause. Then, aligned. She looked at the fading stars beyond the system. At the war humanity had chosen to fight alone. And the truth settled in, heavy and undeniable. They hadn't disappeared. They hadn't abandoned the galaxy. They had done something far more terrifying.